YNW Melly's double murder trial just hit its breaking point. Charged with killing his own friends, the rapper collapsed in court the moment YNW Bortlen, once his brother and music, turned state witness. Betrayal, forensics, and raw courtroom drama collide. This collapse could define the entire trial. Collapse in courtroom as YNW Bortlen turns on YNW Melly. The trial of Jamal Demons, professionally known as YNW Melly, has become one of the most scrutinized cases in recent hip-hop history. The charges stem from the 2018 double homicide of Anthony Williams, known as YNW Sackchaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., known as YNW Juvie. Prosecutors allege that Demons alongside Cortland Henry, better known as YNW Bortland, staged the killings to look like a drive-by shooting while in fact orchestrating the murders from inside a Jeep. The case attracted national attention, not only because of Melly's fame, but also because of the extraordinary details: surveillance footage, cell phone tower data, ballistics analysis, and testimony from insiders connected to the YNW collective. The prosecution's theory rests on 2 points: motive and collaboration. They argue that Melly carried out the shootings for internal group tensions and financial disputes, while Bortland acted as the driver who assisted in staging the crime scene afterward. Melly's defense counters that the killings were random and perpetrated by unknown assailants with vehicle sprayed in a drive-by. The clash between these narratives has produced intense courtroom battles, and in the summer of 2023, the case escalated when Bortland's cooperation and testimony entered the proceedings. Melly went on trial, which ended in a mistrial after a hung jury, and despite facing 2 charges of capital murder, the defense is still pushing for bond and offering a number of compromises if the judge allows it. Cortland Henry was initially charged ASAN accessory after the fact, but secured a plea agreement that positioned him as a key state witness. According to court filings, Henry's decision to testify was the pivot prosecutors needed to directly tie Melly to the shootings. The state intended to use Bortland's inside perspective to dismantle the defense's claims of a random drive-by, instead painting a picture of betrayal within the group. Melly's demeanor during the trial had been largely controlled until the moment testimony from Bortland was delivered. Eyewitness accounts inside the courtroom confirmed that Melly visibly tensed, whispered urgently to his lawyers, and at one point slumped forward as though losing composure. Court reporters present documented his physical reaction, describing it as a collapse under the weight of hearing his friend recount the events. To understand why this collapse resonated so strongly with observers, it is necessary to examine the history of Melly and Bortland's relationship. Both were foundational members of the YNW Collective, a music group and brotherhood from Ford, Florida. They presented themselves as family bound by shared upbringing, creative goals, and loyalty. When Melly's breakout single Murder on My Mind catapulted him to national recognition, Bortland was a constant presence in music videos, tours, and promotional appearances. The bond seemed unshakable. That image shattered when Henry entered cooperation with the state. The testimony itself carried devastating implications. Prosecutors revealed that Henry described the night of the shootings in detail, situating Melly as the individual who allegedly fired inside the Jeep. Ballistic analysis had already established that shots came from within, not outside the vehicle. Combined with forensic trajectory reports, this data placed Melly in the rear left seat. Henry's testimony aligned with this evidence, undercutting the defense narrative. Courtroom spectators recounted the intensity of this moment. As Bortland's words echoed, Melly's hands covered his face, his body shifted forward, and deputies prepared for intervention. Melly just dropped his head and one could see the weight of it hit him right there. The video excerpt circulated widely, amplifying the perception that Melly was witnessing his fate unravel in real time. The legal strategy behind presenting Henry's testimony was deliberate. Prosecutors recognized that forensic data alone risked leaving reasonable doubt given the chaotic nature of ballistic interpretations. However, when paired with testimony from a direct participant, the jury could be guided toward a cohesive narrative. Legal analysts emphasized that insider testimony, while often controversial duetto credibility questions, carries extraordinary persuasive power when it corroborates physical evidence. For the defense, this created a critical challenge. They sought to undermine Henry's credibility by highlighting his plea deal and the potential for reduced sentencing. Defense counsel argued that Henry had every incentive to fabricate or exaggerate his account to protect himself. During cross-examination, lawyers pressed him on inconsistencies in prior statements. Yet observers noted that Henry maintained composure, reiterating key claims with confidence. The impact on jurors remained speculative, but the optics were clear. The prosecution had managed to put Melly and Bortland on opposing sides, eroding the foundation of loyalty that defined their collective. The collapse moment became a symbol of this erosion. Media outlets seized on it, framing the incident as emblematic of betrayal and downfall. Coverage from local outlets emphasized how the courtroom dynamic shifted as soon as Bortland spoke. Commentators suggested that Melly's visible breakdown could sway jurors by signaling an internal acknowledgement of the testimony's gravity. Legal psychologists often caution that nonverbal cues, though not evidence, influence jury perception. To fully contextualize the impact, it is necessary to revisit the chain of evidence leading to this moment. Investigators secured surveillance footage from recording studios and local businesses the night of the murders. This material documented Melly's movements, situating him with the victims hours before the shootings. Phone records placed his device in communication with Henry, even as the Jeep was later reported riddled with bullets. The staged drive-by theory unraveled further when investigators discovered discrepancies between the bullet trajectories and the angle of entry on the Jeep. So, Mr. Henry, what it's going to be is 2 counts of accessory after the fact, tampering with a witness in a capital felony, an unlawful use of a two-way communication device. Furthermore, forensic pathologists confirmed that the victim's wounds indicated shots fired from inside at close range. This aligned precisely with Henry's courtroom testimony, in which he described Melly discharging the weapon from within. When these medical findings were presented, Melly appeared unsettled, often turning to consult his defense team. Combined with Henry's testimony, the scientific evidence formed a narrative the defense struggled to dismantle. Observers drew attention to the psychological component of Bortland's testimony. For years, Melly had referred to him as a brother, praising his loyalty and presence during the rise of YNW. Hearing Henry, once anally, narrate details implicating him in the killings created a dramatic contradiction. Legal commentators framed this as the ultimate betrayal, akin to a fracture in a family structure. Court analysts on law and crime noted that jurors tend to give weight to testimony framed as reluctantly given, particularly when it comes from someone who previously aligned with the accused. The courtroom audience comprised all family members. Reporters and supporters reacted visibly as well. Some gasped, others whispered, while Melly's mother, Jaime Demons, displayed overt distress. Media outlets captured her reactions, highlighting the emotional toll of watching her son collapse under testimony from someone once considered family. The prosecution leveraged this moment by reinforcing the betrayal narrative in subsequent arguments. This portion of the trial marked a decisive turning point. It was no longer a case anchored solely in forensic reconstruction, but a dramatic confrontation between 2 men once bound by loyalty. For jurors, the stark image of Melly collapsing as Bortland spoke may linger as much as the technical details of trajectory reports or phone logs. Human psychology is often swayed by images of despair, vulnerability, or guilt. And legal experts caution that these perceptions, though unofficial, can heavily influence deliberations. As the day closed, the court recessed under heightened tension. Reporters filed stories within minutes. Headline, emphasizing the collapse and the testimony's impact. The narrative of betrayal became dominant across coverage, overshadowing even the forensic experts who testified that day. This media framing ensured that by the next morning, public discourse centered not on the technicalities of ballistics, but on the image of Melly folding under the words of someone he once called brother. The collapse then was not merely physical but symbolic, a manifestation of how the prosecution sought to dismantle Melly's defense through the emotional weight of betrayal corroborated by science and magnified by optics. It set the stage for subsequent courtroom battles in which the defense would scramble to counteract both the forensic evidence and the psychological resonance of Henry's testimony. Loyalty shattered, and the prosecution's case against YNW Melly, the courtroom shifted into a new phase. Following YNW Bortlen's testimony, the trial was no longer framed as an ambiguous forensic puzzle, but rather as a betrayal saga corroborated by evidence. Analysts compared the development to prior high-profile cases in which co-defendants turned state witnesses, noting how jurors often struggle to ignore insider accounts when they align with material proof. Legal precedent demonstrates that accomplished testimony, though scrutinized, remains admissible and persuasive when coupled with corroboration. Prosecutors moved quickly to solidify the decree,